hit record.
You're good.
And I will call the Finance Committee meeting for November 17th, 20 to order. And let's do roll call. Alder Corpus Dax.
Present.
Bill Galvin. Here. And Alder Brian Johnson. Okay, everybody is present, but Alder Dorf is here. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Moved. Second.
Moved by Alder Galvin, second by Alder Corpus, Alder Johnson. Who moved it? Alder Johnson.
We all did.
Everybody moved it. All right. Alder Johnson, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Approval of the minutes from the Joint Finance Personnel Committee from November 2nd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Alder Corpus Dax, second by Alder Johnson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Nay. Motion carries. All right. Regular business. First order of business. Approval of purchase of LifePak cardiac monitors and AEDs from Stryker for Green Bay Metro Fire Department for the sum of $441,828, sole source, and supporting documentation attached. Are there any questions from the staff on this? Staff, from the alders on this? Or do you want to hear from staff? Huh?
I have no questions.
I have no questions. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Motion by Alder Galvin.
Second.
Second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Secondly, approval of purchase of LifePak cardiac monitor from Stryker and mounts for Bellevue Fire Department for the sum of $32,938.25, sole source and supporting documentation attached. Item to be purchased by the Green Bay Municipal Fire Department and passed through to Bellevue using their funds, which would have been the only question I had. So, yes, Alder Johnson.
Thank you, Alder Dorf. Chief Litton, if you could just maybe explain to probably one of our first financial transactions involving the Bellevue Fire Department. And obviously in item number one, which we just approved, the Alloway portion of that, was part of that purchase, but Bellevue is called out separately. Could you just walk us through maybe handle those transactions differently?
Sure. So the merger agreement that was just recently signed by the city and by Bellevue called out the fact. So when we merged with Alloway had an existing ambulance service, and so they had an ambulance in the station and cardiac monitor and all advanced life support equipment that is necessary. The difference with the village of Bellevue is they do not currently have an ambulance. That service is being provided for the next year by County Rescue, who is a private entity. And so as part of us improving the service to Bellevue, we'll be assigning a paramedic to the fire engine that's there, along with this cardiac monitor and other advanced life support equipment, which will thereby give us paramedic first response citizens of Bellevue, thereby reducing the time that it takes for a paramedic to get on scene. County Rescue right now is probably averaging well over 10 minutes on their responses in Bellevue. We'll be able to get everywhere out of the station there in Bellevue and well underneath that. So as part of the merger agreement, monitor that to kind of hop on our bid process so that we can get the reduction because of the number of items that we're purchasing here. It's a pass-through. It's included in their budget for 2021. We're going to make the purchase now. They'll transfer the money to us net 30 or before the bill is due, before it comes due.
So this was something that we just foresaw happening. But I mean, when we look at future transactions, I would presume then that would be part of our agreement and wouldn't necessarily be called out separately.
Yeah, that's correct. This was, this item would have been pulled had the merger agreement not gone through or not been signed. We would have pulled this item. The item number one obviously needs to be done throughout the city. We've got this 15 plus years old and obsolete. So yeah, that's the reason it was on here. We've felt that the merger was going through and we would have pulled it had it not.
Okay.
Alder Johnson? Alder Johnson, yep. And I think that's part of the reason, the true reasons why we separated it is one, the merger just got signed after we put the finance agenda together. And then second, it's two different funding sources. And for this year, being different funding sources, we decided to keep it two separate items. Going forward, yes, they would be brought together.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Alder Galvin, second by Alder Corpus Dax. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, item number 3, approval to award contract for Green Bay Police Department tire contract to Goodyear, piggybacking off the state of Wisconsin contract from 1/1/2021 through 2024. Estimated annual expenditure is approximately $55,000. Alders, do you have any questions on this?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Alder Johnson. I'll second that. Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we're on to number 4, and I see Alder Weary just joined us. Number 4 is a request by Alder Weary to the Finance Committee, which states, due to ongoing reasons of inadequate staffing and prioritizing of tasks in our law department, I'm requesting we hire City Ethics Incorporated or a similar party to draft revisions to the city's Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct as recommended in their 2018 findings, paid for by the City of Green Bay. Alder Weary.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairperson, yeah, obviously this one's been a bone of contention for a while now, and so I'm just looking for any options that legal staff might have. Obviously it's a tough budget year, so if it's going to break the bank, well, then I guess we're going to wait for staff to do it. But, I'm just curious to see what the legal department has on this one.
Sure. Hi. Good evening, Alders. I'm Joanne Bunger, Deputy City Attorney. As I think this item was discussed briefly at the Joint Personnel and Finance Committee, and I believe City Attorney Chavez did email the council, kind of giving them an overview that currently law is working on getting the ethics code and code of conduct revised, as well as some higher priority ordinances as Chapter 33 and our building inspection codes and our sign ordinance. And I believe in that email or when City Attorney presented to the committee a couple of weeks ago, she did look into what the anticipated spending would be for hiring outside counsel to be anywhere between $10,000 and $20,000, depending on the number of meetings needed and the revisions required. In addition, if we were to hire outside counsel, we already did spend some funds in having the code reviewed. So at this point, it's just physically going in and making those changes per the reviewing party's recommendations. If we were to defer this to outside counsel to handle, they would have to do their own review. They wouldn't be able to rely on the other party's review. So they would have to do a review and then a revision. So we, in essence, could potentially be paying for the same work twice.
Alder Weary.
Okay, I didn't.
Or do you want me to? I just noticed Alder Galvin's hand. So,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Alder Galvin.
Thank you. I guess, especially after the last complaint we had against an alder that was just recently settled, and many comments were made by the committee, that in this particular instance, the fact that our code has not been updated quite some time impacted this complaint against this alder. And it was felt that if it had been updated, there might have been some substance to the complaint, but as it was, because it was so outdated, and we haven't been, doing our due diligence on it, the complaint fell apart. I've had my own complaints about ordinances languishing. I know Alder Weary has, and I've been listening for a long time to excuses why that isn't being done. And I can't argue. I believe the reasons I'm being given are valid. But I've also been pushing that we need a solution. We can't just keep hearing that staff is overwhelmed with ordinances that have a higher priority when some of these ordinances, I think, as Alder Weary's request has been sitting, excuse me, has been sitting on the shelf for 2 years. Mine's been sitting for over 3 years. And we see the effects of not having these ordinances up to date and not having the staff available. I know we've been in some tight financial times the last 2 or 3 years, but I'd like at least some words of, here's the light at the end of the tunnel. Here's where it's going to be coming. Because I haven't heard that yet. I haven't heard that it's going to be 6 months or a year or 5 years. And if it's going to be 5 years, that's unacceptable. If it's going to be 2 or 3 more years, that's, again, unacceptable. And I guess I'm looking from staff or from somebody, some kind of reassurance that this is going to be handled, at least with some timelines or some end dates that we can look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Galvin.
Sure. Alder Dorf, would you like me to address that now, or did you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. Okay. So as far as tight timelines go, apparently, obviously, things are a little bit in flux over the next couple months while the city attorney is out on maternity leave. And so I'm taking over the role as acting city attorney, but, taking on that additional workload and delegating as necessary in order to keep the department functioning, at least through the end of January. My understanding is that revising Chapter 33, the ethics code, the sign ordinance are all of high priority. They've always been high priority. I guess, and I'm not sure if there is, just to clarify exactly what our position is that it's not necessarily that we prioritize other ordinances ahead. That does happen on occasion, but it's more of there are other time-sensitive issues that come up, such as litigation. This year particularly has been very heavy with litigation. Last year as well. We've just been served with a few more. So as things, that is impossible to predict. I can't tell you whether within the next couple months we're going to be served with other suits that we have to answer and we have to tender and pull information together and respond to pleadings and whatnot. So as far as workload goes, that is a high priority for our legislative attorney and always has been. But as always, it's always in flux when things come up and we have to respond and we have to respond in a timely manner. Unfortunately, other things do have to wait. So I wish I could give you a tight timeline. Do I anticipate it being another 2 years? No, absolutely not. But can I tell you that it's going to be done in 3 or 6 months? Unfortunately, I cannot.
Okay, then I would ask, as part of what's going on here, that staff put together some kind of a proposal of what it would take so we can alleviate what's been going on. Because you're right, we can't anticipate people filing claims and legal issues and people being out on sick leave or COVID or anything else like that. But you see how this has impacted us. And if you want, the analogy I look at is, we're looking at a hospital in the middle of a COVID epidemic, and we've got people dying out in the hallway or being harmed because we don't have the staff available to take care of them properly. And I'm not saying that we should have enough staff that everything's done within a week, but literally years waiting to get some of this stuff done is not acceptable, in my opinion. If this was a private firm and we had some of these issues sitting on the sidelines, our customers would be leaving and going elsewhere. And so I guess I'm looking for something from staff that what can be done, what can the city do for the law department moving forward in the future so that we can alleviate this kind of a situation reoccurring?
So to clarify,
staff or things like that.
So to clarify, Alder Galvin, there's no blaming going on. You're saying, what can we do to help?
And this is what I've, right, exactly. So I am not blaming anyone. I mean, who knows someone's going to get sick? Who knows if someone's going to lay litigation on our laps? But we're not prepared for it. we are certainly not prepared for what's been going on, and it's hurting the city to have this happening. And I certainly don't blame the law department. They're doing the best I think they can with what they have. They can't help that. But what can the city do for the law department? What does the law department think should be done so we can alleviate some of these issues moving forward?
Do you have to talk that over with
Right.
Attorney Chavez? Or is
I'm
this
not
something?
looking for an answer now.
Yeah,
but I'm looking for an answer soon.
So maybe we should continue. I'm not sure if it's with this side on, but give staff some time to come up
Sure.
with an answer.
If you want to, I don't know. And I'd like to hear what Alder Weary thinks, but 3 or 4 months, if we could have some outline of a plan that they think would help alleviate this.
But as long as it doesn't cost any money. And I'm kind of being facetious, but where are we going to get any money from right now?
As of right now, we all know that we have to keep our heads down, but that doesn't mean we can't plan for the future when all this starts to become better. When the economy is coming back, when COVID is under control, when our staff is back full strength, But I'd like an answer. We can't keep stumbling along the way we're stumbling along. It's not productive and it's not good. And for us.
Alder Weary, did you want to say something?
I appreciate a good discussion. I agree with Alder Galvin and appreciate Attorney Bungert. The reasons really are immaterial. We need results, and it's tough to things take so long. I think we have an ordinance potential change coming from protection policy from last night with the massage business. That's another one right there. Obviously, we don't want that waiting 2 years. That one's pretty, I think, time sensitive one. So these can start piling up pretty quickly. So whatever you can put together would be great. We can get back on track.
After listening to production policy last night, to me, like that issue really takes precedence right now. It seems to, but it was very. You were there last night, Joanne, or Attorney Bungert, right? Production policy. I mean, that seems critical. So something like that comes along, and then you go, oh, well, maybe ethics. See, I think that's how things get pushed. Maybe I don't know.
And I don't disagree with that, but that shouldn't be a reason that things should wait so long, right? I mean, if you read the recommended ethics review, there's some pretty important things in there that should be changed and updated from our recent happenings to avoid, unfortunate situations that don't need to occur in the future. So I'm open to any suggestions you have, Joanne. Work your magic.
Do we want to refer to staff? How do you guys want to handle that?
I would.
I'm sorry. Alder Johnson has his hand up. I didn't see it. Alder Johnson.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, Joanne. When we talk about, and I appreciate the explanation you gave about the prioritization of certain items that come before your department. Who makes that call? Like in terms of which items. And I understand, like when we're in lawsuits, obviously the call makes itself, right? But when we're engaged in other things in terms of prioritizing what gets done first, I mean, how does that process work? And the reason I ask is because I know I have a few things as well that are sitting with law department have made it to that top of the list yet. I think we probably all have certain things. How does that process unfold?
Ultimately, the department head, the city attorney, has the final say as far as workload distribution and what needs to come first on everyone's plate, and then also the needs that are communicated by the particular department we're assisting or alder we're assisting. If there are certain, at least from my perspective, public records requests don't necessarily have a specific timeline, but we do have to be working on those diligently. Otherwise, we expose ourselves to a mandamus action and potential fines and punitive damages, which can be very costly to the city. And then in turn, different contracts for programs, vendors that we need to hire to keep, to hire consultants to to do engineering studies for road improvement or hiring vendors to install different facilities in parks. All those things need to keep moving in order for projects to keep moving, in order for services to be in play, and things to be accomplished for the community. So it's kind of a juggling act. And then when you add in, litigation, which has its own timelines and responses that are kind of set in stone, it's a collaborative effort, but ultimately the city attorney does make the decision as far as what her department is working on at any given time.
Okay, and I appreciate that explanation. And one of the reasons I asked the question, of course, is because if I submitted communication on something, it might be important to me, but once it leaves my hands, I've kind of lost the ability, right, to influence how quickly that moves through the pipeline, as does every alder kind of loses that ability. And so it was just kind of curious, right? If I have something in, for example, the mobility ordinance, Alder Weary's got something in about massage parlors, like who's gets to go first? Is it first come, first serve? Is it? And I understand it's not that black and white. I'm just kind of, talking out loud at this point. So that's why I wanted that explanation. The other question that I had then is, related to, when you have something that, well, actually, let me back up. One question for Director Ellenbecker. Director Ellenbecker, what do we have in our discretionary fund right now?
Contingency?
I'm sorry, contingency fund.
Contingency.
I think the current balance is about 69 or about 65,000. However, we also allocated 45,000. So let me. There's I'm guessing about 22,000 left in the contingency account for 2020 budget.
We allocated 150,000 in 2021. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so the reason I bring this, I'm asking, is because, one of the reasons we have a law department is obviously to protect the city against risk exposure, and yet our inability to properly provide the resources necessary for the law department to keep up to speed on some of these things, it almost puts the city taxpayers at risk by not being able to complete a redo of this particular ordinance that we're talking about right now that Alder Weary has before us. And I think Alder Galvin had kind of alluded to some of the challenges that they had with the ethics hearing and what happens when you don't have an up-to-date ordinance. And so obviously one of the easy answers in those situations is oftentimes to go to outsourcing, which is one of the things that's been offered here. Attorney Bungert has given us her explanation of maybe why that's not necessarily an immediate decision we should make. Sounds like you've got some internal things that we need to address first before we would put that out. So how long would it take for us to be able to allocate the resources necessary to do that? Or is that something that could also be outsourced? And could we use a combination of funds that are remaining this year with funds for next year?
Are you talking about the ethics code?
Correct. Right. I mean, we got the estimate 10 to 20,000, but we were told that it probably wouldn't make sense to send that out right away because we have some internal review to do on that document. So my point is that if we don't have the resources internally right now to do that review, is that something we could reasonably outsource? And what's the level of priority, quite frankly, that needs to be placed on this?
I think to clarify, Alder Johnson, the review of the code has been completed already. My understanding is that we did outsource that review and we received comments. It's just a matter of going through and making those changes and revisions and finalizing draft.
So what's the bandwidth like right now in the law department to do that? Or is that something that we can look at outsourcing as well?
That is on the plate to get handled. Now that some of the election suits have not curtailed, I guess, but are winding down, our legislative attorney will be able to turn her focus onto working on those changes.
Okay.
So could I just have a clarification real quick? Are we talking about the code of conduct? Are we talking about the ethics? Because they're two separate things.
Right.
Except that the code of conduct affects what the ethics board reviews.
Correct. Our ethics code is pretty much verbatim. My understanding is it's pretty much verbatim or nearly an identical recitation of the state statute.
Right. So ethics, yeah. So we're really not talking about the ethics code at all, right?
Just the code of conduct. Right.
Just the code of conduct. So there's some things in here in the attachments that are just a little bit misleading, where they give us the model ethics code. We're talking about code of conduct. And originally, was that developed by the attorneys? Was it developed by city council members? Does anybody know?
Code of conduct?
Chris? Yeah. Chris might know.
I believe the code of conduct we already had in ordinance form. We added the ethics code to kind of augment it. And when we had the outside group review it, they reviewed both because they work together, and that's why they have recommendations to speak both. Because they do work together. They're separate. But
Yeah, and it was my understanding from the review as well, Alder Weary. I mean, you know, this outside attorney had suggested that really we should have things separated into three different areas, and ours are really commingled, making them somewhat ineffective and quite frankly, opening us up to probably a little bit of risk there in terms of how we enforce it. And so it seems to me that they become intermingled in this conversation because we've got to clean it all up.
right, and I think that's what's causing a little bit of angst and confusion, even over on the ethics board, which I'm sure Alder Galvin will admit, because there's sometimes some lack of clarity on what they cover, what they don't, what powers do they have, what don't they, and these recommendations are hopeful to clear that up and give some clear direction and parameters. We don't want to spin our wheels or their wheels on things we don't know how to address or shouldn't be addressing or should be in a different part. So just trying to avoid needless work. Not that we don't like our ethics board meeting all the time. Mr. Bill likes that.
So where in the priorities, and I know that Attorney Bungert, you said it's really hard to place based on other things coming in, but I'm trying to figure out what the appropriate course of action is today so that we're not, sitting in a room a year from now, hopefully in a room and not on Zoom, a year from now, trying to figure out what the next steps are, right? How do we expedite this?
I'm not sure. So as far as priority goes, and I would have to have a discussion with Assistant City Attorney Mather. She's the one tasked primarily with doing the ordinance revisions, and to follow up as far as what her last conversations were with City Attorney Chavez. But my understanding is that ethics Chapter 33 sign are all sign ordinance, and our building and zoning ordinances are all on high priority. It's just a matter of, and it can be worked on simultaneously for the most part. It's just a matter of workload and anything else that's coming down the pipeline at the same time.
So this may seem like a little bit of a stretch, but if you just indulge me for a moment, a lot of times in the private sector, right, you'll take, and I'm recognizing it's not an apples to apples comparison, private to public sector, but even in the case of this particular, we've been told it will take about $10,000 to $20,000. So somebody has made an assessment about how long they think it will take to complete the project. When law department is given these types of requests, does your department do any type of assessment in terms of how long a project might take to complete? And could that be something that would help us more efficiently project manage some of these requests?
I think in theory, we could assess how long it would take. The difficult part is that when our attorneys are working on something, they're not solely working on one thing. Throughout the day, you're working on one thing, you're answering emails, you're fielding questions. There's multiple things that you're working on at the same time. So while a contract attorney is able to give you an assessment, they are working on one thing and know that they are billing and working on one thing or two things, while our office is handling multitude of things on a daily basis. And so then our attention gets focused on other things. So that's why, a project may take 40 hours, but it's 40 hours over the course of 3 or 4 months, because it's not feasible to be able to just focus on one thing and not handle any other aspect of our job for an entire week.
Okay, and that makes sense. And then the one final question I would have is, oftentimes in other committee meetings, we might refer something to staff, but give a specific time frame to that project. So, for example, we want you to come back on this date with this product. Is that something? How difficult and challenging is that to do with your department?
I don't think necessarily that it's difficult. If the timeline is something that is reasonable, it's certainly up to the discretion of the committee to be able to do that, to have essentially staff come back, at least a status update as to where we are in the project. However, it's, then it is time then taken away to come and report back, depending on how frequently that reporting is. While a timeline can be set, again, if something emergent pops up in between that takes away and it's not feasible, surely staff can come back and explain that to the committee. But obviously, it is adding another step in the process. So it's certainly something within, obviously, within the realm of possibility and in the discretion of committee and council.
So in terms of a reasonable motion tonight, if we were to refer this to staff, which I think obviously seems like probably the more obvious option before us tonight, would it be reasonable to have back at the next meeting and tell us when is final revision before us, or if we want it sooner, this is the recommendation that we would make in terms of pursuing outside counsel? Would that be reasonable to get that type of information at our next meeting?
Sure, I can certainly touch base with staff and reach out to City Attorney Chavez as well. As she, I don't want to speak for her as far as her overarching plans for the department beyond the course of the next 2 months or 3 months, as far as prioritization of projects go. And I can report back at the next finance meeting.
Okay. And I'm not necessarily looking for you to be overly specific, right? But if you could give us a window to say, you know what, we think we could get this done in 3 months, 6 months, a year, that at least gives us a reasonable range from which to deliberate whether or not we have the patience to wait that amount of time, or whether we would prefer to pursue an alternative option such as outsourcing the service.
Any further comments? Otherwise, I'll ask.
I would just an observation, perhaps. I mean, I've been doing it now for 18 years, and back when I first started, those first 10 years, whenever we had ordinance changes, it was rare if it ever went over 6 months. I mean, a year would have been impossible. I mean, it was a pretty quick turnaround. We had less staff at that time. So I don't know if we're just being sued a lot more or what's going on, but there should be a way to get these done 6 months to a year easily. So whatever it takes to figure that out, full steam ahead. So yeah, I'm fine with, bringing it back at next meeting, hopefully having a timetable on it. Whatever support you need, let us know. We told that to our clerk with the election, and the same goes for you. We'll figure out a way to make this work.
Okay, Alder Johnson, do you want to make a motion?
Sure. Just one final question, if I could, Alder Dorff, and this is to Director Ellenbecker. if we're to bring this back to the next finance meeting, that would be in December, correct?
December 8th.
December 8th.
Okay, and then we do have a final council meeting. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because if we do have anything left in contingency that perhaps we might want to consider applying towards a project like this, we still have enough runway in terms of time to be able to consider that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not saying that we're going to do that. I just want to know if that's an option. So, okay, so my motion would be that we refer this to staff with the request that they return to the next finance committee meeting with an approximate window of how long it will take for us to complete the project internally, in addition to providing recommended actions should we need to outsource the service.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Alder Galvin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Good discussion.
Thank you.
F, informational, the update on body camera and taser program. I don't know if anyone else had trouble reading the attachment, but I had some trouble reading the attachment. It doesn't come through clearly on my computer. So
we certainly can forward you with the copies again, but I think it's going to be either a quick update from either Chief Smith or Captain Allen. It's going to be an overview. And really the reason why we're bringing it to you as an update to let you know that we would like to have a full presentation at the council meeting on 12/1. So we wanted to give the finance a little bit of a heads up. And they're looking to have a timeline on by 12/8, the finance committee meeting. We would actually bring the pricing to go along with the body camera and taser program, and then looking for some kind of approval if we get that far on the December 15th council meeting. So we didn't want to bring a big program in and bring it all into one meeting with expectations of having it all approved in one night. So again, I think it's going to be a short little update here, and so that we and then the full presentation at the next council meeting.
okay.
So I'll jump on it if it's okay with you, Ben. So we took a look at a lot of different options for cameras. As you know, about 5 or 6 years ago, we started looking at body cameras, but because of the cost, we kind of shelved it because there was not a lot of interest. We didn't get a lot of community interest. We got an occasional email from a member of the media, but there really was not the groundswell of interest that we have now for body cameras. And the price was problematic for us because we had, city financial difficulties throughout that time. We kept it on the back burner. We kept looking at the different camera systems and what other options were out there. Then after the protests and the riots, the George Floyd incident, there was a big groundswell of support for body cameras among the community, among the elected officials, with the Green Bay Packers, as you heard about earlier this year. So what we did is we put together a committee, which Ben was an integral part of, the different locations, met with people who are actually using body cameras, including Appleton, some of the other cities, met with different vendors of the different body cameras that they have out there. Actually, we met with members of the Sheriff's Department, Mike Ronick from IT, and looked at developing our in-house camera system. That would be buy the camera off the shelf for $500 or $800, whatever camera system or cameras, individual cameras, find a way to mount that on the officer, and then build out the whole system ourselves with our own server, our own download, our own redaction software, our own commuter storage, and all that business. After looking at all that and looking at what we think is the best fit, we're leaning towards, but certainly haven't decided fully on Axon Corporation. Axon is one of the big corporations. They also have Taser, or they're part of Taser. Taser's part of them. But Axon has a redaction software. They have the servers. They have the evidence.com storage. They have the cameras for the cars. They have the first-rate cameras for the bodies. It's an expensive proposition, but we've been working with them at getting the pricing as reasonable as we can. So that's kind of what no decisions have been made, no contracts have been signed, no final numbers have been finalized. So that's kind of where we are in a nutshell. Ben, am I missing anything? Captain Allen?
No, you pretty much hit it on the head. It's been a project going on since about June with this run. of it. We met with 4 different vendors, met with agencies in Wisconsin that use these particular cameras. But again, like Chief Smith said, our basic needs are really only met by what we found in Axon. So that's kind of the direction that we want to go. That is the direction we want to go because it provides the best solution for what we need. It also includes the TASER, which many of you are familiar with. And we are at a point now with our current TASER program that we're basically outdated. We have some of the original TASERs going back to about 2005 that are still in service. So, most of us don't drive a vehicle that old, let alone we have a use of force tool that is that old and then some. So we need to upgrade that anyway. And along with this program is also the squad cams, dash cams, which they're referred to sometimes. Our current dash cam system is coming to the end of its life as well. So that's, it's one system as opposed to multiple systems that we have to have multiple storage units at. So this really is the one that makes sense for us.
And if I could just jump in, DePere already has it. We're looking at maybe having Ashwaubenon and Sheriff's Department. They're still in the research phase as well, but they both may be jumping on it. Again, no decision has been made, I don't think, by either agency, but DePere has it. And for all the agencies, the big agencies in the county to have the same platform, make sharing information a lot easier, make storing information a lot easier, make sharing information with the district attorney's office for prosecutorial purposes a lot easier as well. So it kind of makes sense if we're all in the same system.
Chief, I think there was one other item that I think we were going to add, and maybe you already said it, but the Packers are also supporting this program.
Right, as the Packers announced in the middle of the summer, they're supporting the program with a substantial donation. I don't have the exact dollar figure. We'll leave that to the Packers to come up with, but they're looking to assist both us, Ashwaubenon, and also the Sheriff's Department with the purchase of the body cameras, and that would be very beneficial for us because it'll help pay for the first couple of years of the body camera program here in Green Bay. I think that's a big win for us if we can get the Packers support, and it sounds like they're going to commit to that.
Yeah, I'm Alder Galvin.
So, in this process, we've pretty much ruled out any other but this Axon company. Is that correct?
Right now, we still, if some other company comes up and can meet the benefits that Axon has, we'd certainly take a look at them. But looking at them and comparing them side by side with what they offer, with what we need, which is going to be the best solution for us. Honestly, building a system ourselves would probably be cheaper. But putting a system together on the fly with people who don't do body cameras and don't do that kind of thing, I think it's problematic. I think in the long run, honestly, and even talking to folks like Mike Ronick, I think we'd be sorry if we hired the additional people internally to run a program like that. With Axon, it's almost a turnkey operation. They come in, they help you set up your cars, they set up everybody with the cameras, they make sure that it runs. Halfway through the program, halfway through the 5-year program, they swap out with the latest version of the camera, the newest camera that they have. So you get an automatic upgrade, I believe, in the middle of the 5-year camera program. Again, it seems like it's the best fit for us and will be the best long term for us.
That's why I'm asking. I remember our initial foray into the car camera, and that was we tried to set it up. It didn't work out right. It took too long for the cars had to sit there literally for almost 8 hours to download the previous shift video. It was missing things. It was, and then we had people that we tried to train to be the experts on it, and gave them multiple hats to wear, and that wasn't working out. And it just, in my opinion, it was a mess. And we've struggled with that with IT and a few other things in the past also. Obviously, with our dictation of reports and things like that, it has also had its problems in the past. So. Are we going to be testing this or putting it out to bid for other companies, or are we just jumping on board with this company unless someone else waves their hand and says, hey, I've got something similar, or I can do a better job for less?
Do you want me to jump in?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So we have already tested Axon through our SWAT team. So we had pretty much what we would get for our patrol guys would be the same as what our SWAT team used. Some of the options that were there, and one that's real important to us is the live view feature. So at any point during a high risk or a critical incident, from the shift commander's position, you can tap into live view of the officer's body cams. There's certainly a couple of working pieces to that, but that option is there. This all went out through Sourcewell. So we use that as the bidding process, which is familiar to Diana and has been used by the city frequently. We did take a hard look at Axon GTAC, which is our current squad cam program. And we've had a lot of issues and a lot of problems with that product. WatchGuard was another one we looked at. They're just not where Axon is right now. And then body worn, which essentially is having our officers wear their smartphone inside their shirt that will record the interactions that they have. So in the end, Axon was that product that is best suited for what we need.
Right. And then what if we do approve this and go forward, where are we at with the changes that are going to be needed for the policies, procedures? And then I would imagine training for the officers, how much is that going to entail? And I would hope that we bring the district attorneys and that on board so they can get trained up as to exactly what this is capable of doing and everything that's involved with that.
Yep. DLSA has been engaged in a good chunk of this as we're working towards the end. And his request was that if there be one system that all the agencies could go on, that would be very, very beneficial to his office. Currently, there's about 13 different systems that they have to pull information from. And this would, if all agencies are able to do this, would really narrow that down quite a bit. Axon also has basically, if we have a video that needs to get to the DA, there's a web link that is sent to the DA's office, and they click on it and they can view that right from beginning to end. So if you remember, Bill, from back in the old days, it was burning CDs, it was burning discs, it was burning whatever we could to get video over there, and somehow, some way, it made it over there eventually. So that kind of eliminates that problem. As far as all the training goes, it couldn't be better timing because we will be coming into our winter and our spring in services. Axon provides huge support through that training period. They also provide through the TASER portion of it, they provide one master trainer position, and then also I believe it's 3 trainer positions. So they'll come in, train our guys, get them trained up to continue to train our officers as we move through the use of the new TASERs.
And your last question, Alder Galvin, was on the policies. Lexipol is our master policy program. They have model policies. We can also get model policies from other cities. So I think we'd be able to craft the right policy using those policies that are already in effect in other areas. And looking at the Wisconsin laws, Appleton certainly would be a good resource for us for that. So we're already working with the group to get together and come up with the right policies for us. And if everything goes well, and I know this is probably going to be your next question, what kind of time frame are we looking at? And that's actually what I asked Kelsey. What would it be if we could move forward as quickly as we can? And we're thinking, midwinter, February, March kind of time frame before we're able to see this going, if we're able to move forward this as quickly as I hope we can.
Right. And will these cameras be, I know at one time the audio recordings were activated when officers activated their emergency lights or and then you read in media reports where somehow in some of these high-risk situations where there's litigation and complaints back and forth that somehow the cameras weren't turned on or they were turned off midstream. Are there things in place to prevent that or to stop it from happening? Or if it does happen, there's policies and that to cover that.
Yeah, so the program we're going with has multiple activation features from crash indication to overhead lights to speed sensor to opening doors. There's also a holster sensor, so anytime an officer draws his weapon, the camera will activate. these do have that back recording. So before it is actually recording, it's recording event prior. So it has that capability as well, much like the squad cams currently have.
Okay, so we would never read
question too. Go ahead. Then let me ask one when you're done.
So we would never read in the paper where there was a shooting incident and somehow the cameras weren't on.
I don't know that I'd want to be completely comfortable with saying never. It is technology. I think there are so many safeguards in place that it would be a very rare event where
okay, so I guess there's no way an officer could turn the camera off or prevent a recording from taking place.
Correct for the most part, yes.
Right. But if they are going into Bill Alder Galvin, if they are going into say an interview a sexual assault or interview a child regarding something, they do have the capability of being able to turn that off for something that's as sensitive as that.
Sure.
But in a regular incident, like Ben said, we had the opportunity to investigate one of the shootings in Appleton where they had the body cameras and they worked very, very well. Our detectives were raving when they got back about how much evidence was there and what a great perspective you get from the different officers that were there whose body cams were activated. And if there was a problem with someone improperly shutting off their body camera in violation of the policies that we adapt, we would certainly deal with that.
My concern is, we're trying to maintain or earn the community's trust, and they have to trust that it's not going to be like, oh, oops, somehow the camera turned off in the middle of this situation that took place.
I mean, it would essentially have to be a motivated move to be able to turn that thing off. It's not like a quick swipe of it and it shuts off or anything. It would be deliberate that they would shut it off. And I think that's, like Chief Smith said, would be a policy violation piece.
All right, thank you.
So Director Ellenbecker, the Packers are going to help us out. What though do you see the impact being to the budget after the however long the help we get from the Packers is over with? What do we need to plan for? Do you have any idea?
Again, all the financial numbers are not complete. So we are planning to bring you a complete financial package on December 8th.
Okay, I'll drop the question then. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. All right, any other discussion on this? Because we'll get to ask more questions, right? There's going to be 2 more presentations, so. All right. And this is not an action item. So do you need a receive and place on file or anything, Director, or just informational?
I think it's just informational. I don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't think we need anything. Okay. Contingency, it says 71,697, but we know that's not true. So
that is correct. Actually, correct. I did verify it. Actually, instead of 21,000, it is going to be after the last meetings. Contingency transfer of 45,000. It is down to 26,697 and 70 cents.
Okay, thank you. And the next Finance Committee meeting will be held Tuesday, December 8th at 4:30 p.m. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by Alder Johnson. Second by me. I'll second that. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. See you soon. Stay safe.